WNCN News at 7.
Our education matters.
We can't just continue to invest in a model that's a century old.
The future of education in North Carolina.
That the children do get all that they can get from the schools.
We still find that all the teachers are leaving North Carolina.
From the Sandhills to the Triangle, we travel through central North Carolina to find out what matters to you.
My biggest concern is just make sure it's on par with the rest of the country.
The parents.
Our schools are far too overcrowded.
The students.
And it's important that we receive funding so that we have the best education possible.
And teachers.
North Carolina has failed to reinvest in its schools.
So together,
education in North Carolina could get better.
We can create a better future for our schools.
You can't go backwards, you need to go forward.
Defining the future of education in North Carolina. Good evening, I'm Sean Maroney.
And I'm Melanie Sanders. We are live here at the Burning Coal Theater in Raleigh for our second Education Town Hall.
We've gathered all the major stakeholders in this debate. We have teachers, we have students, we have parents, we have lawmakers who make the decisions here in Raleigh, all to discuss tonight what students need today to move toward tomorrow.
And we invite you, those of you sitting at home watching, we invite you to join in the conversation on social media. Go to Twitter, we're at WNCN, as well as our Facebook page. And before we focus on the future, we want to focus on today. And to do that, we turn to the nation's report card.
So in math and reading, North Carolina is in line with the rest of the nation. But if you take a closer look at the numbers, you'll see there's room for improvement.
Right. In math, only 45% of fourth grade students tested proficient. In 8th grade, that number drops to 36%.
In reading, only 35% of fourth graders tested proficient and only 33% of 8th graders.
We want to bring in our panelists right now. We have Dr. June Atkinson, the state school superintendent. Thank you so much for joining us. We have Gary Salamido, the vice president of the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Dr. Atkinson, we want to start with you because today the top story, at least in terms of education, the governor will sign the repeal of Common Core. What will be the replacement?
Well, first of all, we need to recognize that the bill that will be signed by the governor actually establishes a commission to review the standards. And at the end of the day, I believe that this commission, as well as the parents in our state, will believe that we need to teach our children how to add, multiply, subtract, divide, do fractions, percentages, decimals, that our students should be able to apply algebra, geometry, and statistics in meaningful ways in the workplace, in college, and in their normal lives. And that's what the Common Core standards are. And I, as state superintendent, welcome the eyes of more people to look at the standards. One of the problems we've had in the past is it has been very difficult to get people to actually review the standards and give feedback about how to improve. So today, that bill really establishes a commission to look at the standards, and I believe that other eyes are good for the standards and that parents and others will see that we want our children to be prepared. We want our children to have options when they graduate, and standards are the foundation of making sure that students are ready for the world that they will have to face.
And Gary, you're vice president of North Carolina Chamber of Commerce. Obviously, you depend on businesses coming to this area. You are a big supporter of Common Core. Are you concerned, or what are your concerns, if any, when it comes to competitiveness now that Common Core has been repealed?
Well, thanks for having us here tonight. I can't say it any better than Dr. Atkinson said. See, we're not looking at this as a repeal. We're looking at it as Common Core standards are going to be in place during this next few months while revisions are made. An open process to revision to take the good that's in the Common Core, look at them honestly, have lots of eyes on them, make them even better. Things can always get better. They're high now, we can even make them higher. So from a competitiveness standpoint, we think open eyes are good. We think taking a deliberate process here that keeps what we have until we have something else is a good idea. So that's why we think we're in an okay position right now going forward, and the standards will hold up.
All right, Mr. Salamido, thank you for that input. We want to turn it now to our Eileen Park, who's gathered with several people or stakeholders in all this. She has teachers. She also has local business leaders to sort of get their feedback, as well as students, on what they think about this. Eileen.
Sean, I am joined by Linda Van Gombos, who's a teacher at East Cary Middle School, correct? And also Natalie Beyer, who is with the Durham Public School System. She is a school board member. I'm going to start with Linda about what she thinks about Common Core. Linda, you've heard the panelists speak about this. What do you think?
Well, I'm teaching the Common Core right now. I like teaching it. I think they're right. If we have to make revisions to keep ourselves competitive, then we should, and we should move forward. I want to continue to move forward so that our children are entering a world, I have no idea what it's going to look like, none of us do, but we want to be able to compete nationally and internationally, so we need to step up.
What is it about Common Core that makes us competitive?
It's very, very clear about what the kids need to learn, and there isn't any fuzzy space. You want to know what. It isn't enough, say, in English that I teach to say, what is the main idea? It is, how does the conflict contribute to the character making this decision, which ultimately maybe is the theme of the, it's multi-layered. And it gets kids thinking in a multi-layered way. It isn't, can you answer this question, check it off the list. It's asking kids to go and analyze why they think what they think. And they need to be able to do that.
All right, Linda, thank you very much. I'm turning now to Natalie, who is a school board member with the Durham Public School System. What do you think about Common Core? Is it working?
You know, I think we've invested a lot as a state in training teachers in Common Core, and I think there's a lot of misconception about what Common Core is. Common Core is not a federal mandate. It's a group of standards for teachers to use for instruction. And I think once the commission reviews that, they will see that these are strong global standards that will help our students get ready. So I look forward to them digging in more, coming from a place of information and being informed rather than being afraid about Common Core.
All right, some good points from both our guests. Sean and Mel, back to you.
All right, Eileen, thank you. Talking about this commission, who's going to be in charge of this commission? Will it be DPI or will it be out of the governor's office? And also sort of looking at the fact that we're going to be examining standards and the way to implement these things. Was it fair to say that Common Core was rolled out without really a pilot program in this state? I mean, the first state, Kentucky, rolled it out before Common Core was even completely written yet. Are we sort of working our way backward to go forward?
Well, there's a lot of misinformation about what happened in North Carolina. In 2008, a commission of parents, teachers, superintendents, business people got together and said, we need to change our standards, and we need to also change our testing program. And so they made recommendations. So when they made the recommendations and the State Board of Education adopted those recommendations, we started a process as early as 2008, going across the state, getting feedback from our citizens, our teachers especially, about what is wrong with our current standards and what do we need to change. So when the National Governors Association and the Chief State School Officers decided that it would be a way to help all states be in a better place to standards, when we decided to get together, then when we looked at what the Common Core standards had after many, many drafts, we saw that it was very close to what our teachers and others said that we needed to change. In math, they said that we need fewer topics. In math, they said that we need to teach our children not only how to add, multiply, subtract, divide, do fractions and percentages, but when to use those steps. And they also said that it was very important that we teach our children with great understanding so that they could go beyond just memorizing a formula. So the State Board of Education adopted the standards in 2010. We had 2 years. Fortunately, we received Race to the Top dollars so that we could do professional development for our teachers across the state. And so we spent at least 2 years in doing professional development of teachers. And one of our challenges anytime we change standards is the professional development. And what's happened with turnover of teachers in our state has had an impact on our being able to continue to provide that professional development, because some teachers have used the standards for now 3 years. Other teachers have just used them for 1 year.
All right, Dr. Atkinson and Gary Salmon, we're going to continue this discussion obviously throughout this half an hour. It's really interesting and impacts a lot of people.
You're touching on issues that we will continue to discuss over the course of this half hour. But for right now, remember, you at home, you can join in the discussion. You can go to our Twitter page at WNCN. You can also go to our Facebook page, WNCN TV.
And throughout this half hour, we're also going to be talking about expanding students' horizons, how one innovative program is helping students catch the vision of the future.
It opened my eyes to many different possibilities and new career choices that I never even knew existed.
And welcome back to our Education Town Hall, where we're live in the Burning Coal Theater in downtown Raleigh. Now, one of the keys to preparing students for the workforce is early exposure to science and math.
Duke University is taking an innovative approach to teaching kids, some of the smartest kids in the country, not just here in the Triangle, but across the country and actually across the globe, to give them a jump start in mathematics, technology, and engineering.
Idea of our future looks like this, the setting.
These high school students from around the country are converging on Duke's campus to help plan the future.
The first few days, we created artifacts from the future, which was kind of making a tangible product to show people what we wanted a future to look like.
It's the ultimate design task.
The Futures Institute at Duke University's TIP program is reserved for the smartest of the smart, the highest scoring students in Duke's talent identification program, TIP.
It's sort of letting your imagination go loose and sharing it to others and building upon it.
Exploring space and technology to question what will life be like in the year 2040.
Stem cell research will create a sort of immortality for humans, where time doesn't govern humans and therefore we don't age.
A 3-week camp on Duke's campus. These teenagers are encouraged to explore how they could help shape the future.
The future is not predestined, is not pre-written, but is actually a space for them to navigate, understand, and make their own decisions within.
So they're in high school, but they're getting this concept.
Oh, they get it like that.
The Futures is really just one segment of a much larger TIP program that scouts the brightest students from rising 6th graders through the 12th grade, reaching 2.5 million students in its 34-year history.
We really try to encourage creative and critical thinking through active learning.
TIP's Director of Innovation and Outreach says this summer alone, 11,000 students are participating in TIP.
Classes that give students the opportunity to study medicine and robotics and nanotechnology and media.
And these are fun classes, too.
Fun classes. I mean, the students are having fun. It's a risk-free environment, so we don't give students grades.
While Duke in Durham is home base, there are TIP host academies across the country, as well as a summer studies program in India. And there are plans to expand to China, an impressive network with proven success.
TIP was life-changing. It was one of the best experiences of my life. It probably put me on the path towards becoming a professor because I felt like my professors were role models, my peers were my role models.
Dr. Rachel Newcomb was in the TIP program in the late 1980s, now a cultural anthropology professor at Rollins College in Florida.
TIP taught me that it was okay to be smart.
And that may be one of the biggest lessons here. Academically gifted students who can at times be socially challenged. Here, things like evolutionary biology is common conversation.
Is it nice to be in a classroom with sort of like-minded people?
Yes, definitely. You don't get that in school, and this is a whole new dynamic of learning.
So Duke's TIP program is an invitation-only program for some of the smartest kids in the country, but it does give us an idea of how to create sort of an innovative, create a learning environment that's different, sort of a learning environment that's interactive, that could be potentially expanded beyond the TIP program.
And I want to welcome you back to our panel. We have Dr. June Atkinson, State Superintendent. We also have Gary Salamito, who is the Vice President for North Carolina Chamber of Commerce. And I want to start with you, because what is it that employers, when they're coming to our state, what are they looking for in an educated workforce?
Well, thanks. What they're looking for is critical thinking, the ability to problem solve, and the types of programs that are built around STEM. I mean, a critical component, whether you're in technology, whether you're in the life sciences and healthcare, whether you're in high-end manufacturing, whatever you're interested in, having the ability to critical think, to connect science, technology, education, and math, and to look how it applies. So when you look at a state like North Carolina, it has the workforce, it has the educational institutions, what they're looking for is the alignment of those institutions to help the young people through that process and create a competitive workforce that is not only competitive for North Carolina, regionally, nationally, but is globally competitive.
All right, let's go to Eileen Park. She is talking to business leaders, local business leaders, as well as teachers and students to get her reaction. Eileen?
Mel, I'm joined by several business leaders. Let's start with Caroline McCullen with SAS, Todd Davis over here with CenturyLink, and also Rosalind Fonks. If you guys could just wave at the camera real quick. You heard it from our panelists. Critical thinking is necessary for students to be ready for the business world. Caroline, in your opinion, working for SAS, what are you looking for in terms of, students who are about to enter the real world?
Well, certainly we would agree with what Gary said. We're looking for those who can think critically and work in teams together to solve problems. But we're also looking for those highly skilled analytical skills. We want students who are graduates and employees who can solve problems and help our customers solve their problems. So that's the kind of, we don't see enough of those, in fact, and that's a serious problem for us.
And why don't you see enough of those here?
They're not graduating from the school system. I think that that begins in K-12, actually, because students begin to be interested in a subject like math or science when they get inspired by some teacher, like some of the ones sitting behind me. And unless that happens, they may not know that some of those careers are out there and that they're very exciting. So.
All right, Todd, I'll ask you if you think that students in North Carolina are ready for the real world.
I think they're making progress, but there's much more work to do. And we've seen in historical evaluations, not just against the other states, but also against a global environment, that our rankings in education have been falling between 2009 and 2012 at a time when businesses need more energy, they need to transform their businesses. And that comes from students that have a great foundation, that enter the workforce that we can hire and identify and that we can invest in as businesses. Innovation comes from people who have an outside perspective, not always from people that are in leadership roles or from the top. And we need adaptive students and new hires that will help us move our businesses forward.
But we're not there right now.
Not right now. I think there's more work to be done. Certainly, there are great businesses located here in North Carolina, coming to North Carolina, and there are businesses committed to investing. But there's more work to be done when it comes to practical applications of education.
All right, Todd, thank you for your thoughts. Now let's move over to Rosalind real quick. Rosalind, you work for John Deere. In terms of what you've heard so far on how our students are being educated, are students ready for the real world?
I think they are, but there is still more work to be done. At John Deere, over 40% of our workforce are technical employees, meaning engineering, IT professionals, and the like. And we need to make sure that the curriculum that we're offering in schools today help groom them to be able to enter into those professions, the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math professions, so that we can hire them and be more competitive as a company. Right now in the U.S., we are losing against countries like China and India, for example. They're graduating more engineers and IT professionals at a much higher rate than we are in the U.S. And so it's our responsibility to make sure that we're giving that feedback to the educational system to make sure that we've got the right curriculum and developing students and growing leaders and growing that talent so they can be employable for us in the future.
What else can we do right now in terms of developing those talents necessary to be competitive in the business world?
Really challenging and stretching them and giving them demanding curriculum that allows them to be able to critically think and be clear thinkers, not giving the curriculum that allows them just to memorize formulas and things like that, but really challenging them to think differently about how to solve problems and developing curriculum that really gets after that versus memorizing formulas and things like that.
All right, Rosalind, Todd, Caroline, thank you so much. Mel and Sean, back to you.
All right, thanks, Eileen. And Gary, as you heard the business leaders mention, there is a direct relationship between how students are educated in North Carolina and state revenue, because businesses who come to North Carolina want to feel that there is a local workforce who they can hire.
That's true. The local workforce they can hire now, and more importantly, a predictable workforce for the future. If they're coming to North Carolina, they're looking at the state as, do you have the workers I need today? Equally, if not more importantly, are you going to have an education system that my employees are going to find rewarding, that gives opportunities for their young people, for their children, and also predictable for the future? If we want to expand, if we want to make an investment in North Carolina, I want to make it for the long term, and I want a predictable source of workers for the future.
All right, thanks, Gary.
All right, remember, you at home, you can join in on this discussion. All you have to do is go into our Twitter page at WNCN, as well as our Facebook page, WNCN TV, to ask your questions, and you'll be heard.
That's right. We will read some of your comments right after the break. And we are live at the Burning Coal Theater in Raleigh. We will be right back. Stay with us.
And welcome back to WNCN's Education Town Hall. We are live at the Burning Coal Theater in downtown Raleigh.
Throughout the evening, we've been asking you at home to take part in the discussion here via Facebook. We're also on Twitter at WNCN.
So now we want to take the opportunity to read some of those comments that you've been sending in. Serena writes, I have a rising third grader, and Common Core to me seems unusually complicated. There are doctors, lawyers, nurses, teachers who are extremely successful, not having been exposed to Common Core.
And Erica writes, it seems implementation was rushed and expensive. We haven't really had a chance to get acclimated to it.
And finally, Chuck writes, we can't just toss things out without a plan or allowing the kinks to work out. It's foolish to waste money on more materials, training, and consultants. So that's some of your comments right now that we've been receiving online. You can still join in the discussion. Tweet at WNCN. Also go to our Facebook page, WNCN TV.
Yeah, we really want to hear from you. We'll be right back.
If you could use one word to describe education in North Carolina, what would it be?
Fair, maybe average. It should, in my opinion, I think it should be top of the line here in North Carolina. Challenge.
Lacking. There are so many opportunities that kids could have to do more things in school, and they're not given that opportunity because there is overcrowding, because the teachers don't have enough resources and time.
Opportunity. Because it lies in your hand, and the opportunity is there. It's up to you to receive.
I think the future of education is bright.
I would say exciting. There's so many excitable, wonderful teachers out there willing to give their heart and soul and pocketbook. Hopeful.
And welcome back to our second half hour of our WNCN Education Town Hall. We are streaming live right now on WNCN.com as well as on our app, WNCN.
It has been a long year for teachers as lawmakers continue to debate the issues: pay, tenure, policy. WNCN's Justin Quisenberry takes a look at the state of North Carolina's teachers.
You're choosing how you want to learn.
After 20 years in the classroom, Linda Van Gombos works to keep her students' attention and her focus on them.
It doesn't really matter what the state is doing when I'm here in my classroom with my students. That's the reality.
That's echoed by the director of bands at her school, East Cary Middle.
Don't worry about what's happening politically. Remember to keep your focus on the children and keep your focus on what you love and doing with your life.
What's happening in the state has impacted what's happening in classrooms.
North Carolina has failed to reinvest in its schools. If you fail to invest in your employees, they leave.
600 Wake County teachers quit last school year.
Now we're having to leave just to make ends meet.
In 2013, 13% of North Carolina teachers left their jobs. That's 12% more than in 2012.
We are finding that more and more students coming out of high school choosing not to enter teaching as a profession.
It's who I am, and to have to make the decision to leave that for financial reasons was devastating.
School districts in other states see the pay issues in North Carolina as an opportunity. The Houston Independent School District in Texas even held a job fair in Raleigh.
It is sad that I've become a statistic.
Linda Van Gombos is not planning to go anywhere.
I don't have any desire to leave education. I've done other things, and this is my first best destiny.
Like any good teacher, she sees the lesson in the struggles the state faces.
So you have to have a little bit of patience and a lot of hope and positivity. But we've been in bad places in education before. And we come through it and say, now we can see where we're going.
Justin Quisenberry, WNCN News.
So what better way to discuss the state of teachers than to turn to our panel? Again, we welcome Dr. June Atkinson, a former teacher and current state superintendent. And we also want to join Mark Jewell, the vice president of the North Carolina Association of Educators, who represents a group of educators here in our state. And Mark, I want to start with you tonight. What are the chief frustrations that teachers in our state have right now?
You know, listening to those teachers talk about why they're in the classroom now is very inspiring. I go back to my personal story. I came here 17 years ago from a very poor state of West Virginia, and I came to North Carolina because it had a world-class education system. They paid well. They paid me for my master's degree. They invested in the student in the classroom. I had a teacher assistant when I was in 5th grade. I had a guidance counselor. I had a social worker, a school psychologist, all those support systems in a very high-needs, high-poverty school in inner-city High Point. But we worked together. In North Carolina public schools. And what we saw last year in the General Assembly was the defunding, really, of public education in North Carolina. And we've had teachers have to do more and more. We saw around 6,000 teacher positions that were eliminated. Close to 4,000 teacher assistant positions were eliminated. This on top of an increase of 17,000 students. And you know, for the past 5 out of 6 years, salaries have been frozen. So it's been, if you heard the teachers that are having to leave, it's been very difficult for teachers to have to stay and make ends meet and live and work and teach in North Carolina. So we know that the challenges are out there, but we know that every state that has a strong public education system has to have revenue. When you have a strong tax base, you have strong public schools in North Carolina.
All right, and we're going to talk with you in just a moment, Dr. Atkinson. But before we do, let's go to Eileen Parker. She is joined by business leaders as well as local lawmakers.
Well, Mel, right now I am actually joined by 2 teachers from Fayetteville, Tamika Kelly and Carol Olinger, correct? Got your names right? All right, wonderful. So we're on the subject of teacher pay, and it's quite a controversial issue. Obviously, North Carolina is 46th in the country when it comes to teacher pay. Just before we were talking about their salaries, can you share with us real quick what you make?
Currently, I make about $33,000 a year.
And that includes the supplements from your county.
And so I've been making that particular salary for the past 7 years since I've been a teacher because my pay has been frozen. I started in 2007 and my pay hasn't been raised since then, excluding the 1.2% raise they gave last year for teachers.
Tamika, give us an idea of how difficult it is to survive on that kind of salary.
Well, it's very difficult because when I started teaching, of course, I was a single person. Now I'm married. I have a young son who's 3. And so, you know, the cost of living with inflation, the state of the economy the way it is, those necessary things like housing, bills, those things continue to go up, but my pay hasn't. And so I think it's very unfair to not pay us as the professional people we are. We come with a set of skills that are particular to the jobs that we do every day, and we're not paid as professionals.
Were you ever tempted to leave the state as a result of this?
I have friends all over the country, friends who work in D.C., friends that work in Texas who was recently recruiting up here, and they get paid way more than I do. And I'm always tempted to leave, but North Carolina is my home and I want to stay here. And as a North Carolina Teacher Fellow alum, I was very excited to be able to teach in my home state, and I wasn't able, and so to be able to be paid to live here, the place that I love so dearly, it just breaks my heart every time I have to pay a bill or, you know, pay for my son's daycare, which is way more than anything I would make.
All right, thank you for putting that into perspective. All right, same question for you. How much do you make?
I make less than $30,000 a year. I work at Southview High. I worked at Southview High School in the fast forward reading lab, and it's just not nearly enough.
Give us an idea. Break it down for us. After rent, after paying your food bills, after paying your electricity, what does that amount to? Do you have any leftover money for any leisurely activities?
No, because the money that's left we spend in the classroom. We don't actually do that. I'm blessed enough to have an awesome husband, Leon, who takes care of everything else I would like to do. So any actual money that I would have from my paycheck is not spent on having a good time or going anywhere and doing anything fun. It goes towards a bill or towards the children in the classroom that always seem to need supplies, a snack, lunch money, or something extra that they don't have.
All right, you just got firsthand perspective of how difficult it is to survive on a teacher's salary here in North Carolina. Mel and Sean, I'll toss it back to you.
All right, thanks, Eileen. Mark, you hear that, I'm sure you hear this often. And these educators, these are educated teachers. They are making under $30,000 a year. They don't have any money after they pay their bills, their rent, their food, and then of course they have to then spend money in their classroom. How can you possibly even think of retaining teachers in the state if that's a scenario?
Well, that's the concern that we hear right now. And when I talk to principals and superintendents and say, listen, they just lost a science and math teacher who spoke Spanish in Leland, North Carolina to make $10,000 more in Horry, South Carolina, that's a problem. When we hear of a superintendent in Tyrell County that has had an Algebra 1 position posted for 3 months and not one applicant, that's a concern. Teachers don't even have to relocate to make $10,000 more. They're jumping over to the border states. They're valued, they're invested. They get the support there. The things that we have, that we've always had here in North Carolina. And we've led the way for decades of a world-class school system here. And we need to get that back. And
Oh, I'm sorry, continue.
No, I was just going to say, and to be competitive, and we always want to make sure our kids are ready for the workforce, college and career ready. But you don't do that by slashing pre-K programs. You don't do that by slashing teacher assistants in lower grades. You don't do that by increasing class size. In order to get our kids ready, it's not cheap to educate children in America, particularly children of poverty and children with special needs. It takes resources. And
Dr. Atkinson, it's been highly publicized this year, states poaching our teachers, trying to poach our teachers. As a representative, as a state superintendent, how does that feel, and what is the morale for those in the education system here in our state?
In all candor, it makes me want to cry. People in our state have worked so hard to improve public education, and of course we have a lot more to do. But anytime you have an enterprise such as public education and where you need highly professional, skilled people, we know if we look at our partners in business and industry that the businesses that sustain profit, that make a difference, pay their people well. And so we need, and I'm optimistic, we need to increase our beginning teachers' pay, and we need to increase the pay of all of our teachers. And we have to make sure that we give them the support necessary in the classroom. Today, teaching is not the way it was in the 1950s or the 1960s, and we cannot depend on our teachers to be the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, to do every single thing for the for the students in the classroom. And that's why we need the supports, and that's why we need teacher assistants, and that's why we need technology, and that's why we need books, and that's why we need psychologists and sociologists. We know, and teachers recognize, that it takes a lot of work to support every single child so that they will graduate well prepared.
Dr. Atkinson, thank you for putting that in perspective for us. And again, as we're having this discussion, one of the big things is teacher turnover, especially recently. The numbers are staggering. So what's being done to turn this tide? And for that, I sat down with Governor Pat McCrory's Senior Education Advisor, Eric Gucan. What is North Carolina doing to keep teachers here?
Well, I think you need to do a number of things, and I think one of the things that we're focused on, obviously, is teacher compensation. We are in a situation where, due to the recession and due to the events of the last 10 years, really, we've got some making up to do.
That making up, Gucan says, comes in the form of Governor McCrory's sweeping new education initiatives announced back in May, with the goal of implementing them statewide by 2018.
But we can't just continue to invest in a model that's a century old. We have to innovate.
Part of that innovation would be modernizing the teacher pay scale, allowing teachers to earn more money earlier in their careers. It also provides a career pathways component, which would reward teachers for improving student achievement.
65% of our kids, of our fourth graders in North Carolina, do not read at grade level, are not proficient readers. 65%.
In the new system, local school districts have a lot of the power in determining the raises. Teachers who are leaders in their schools and who mentor their colleagues could be paid more. They could also earn more if they teach a high-need subject or at a high-need school.
What we're talking about, and the governor made this announcement, is teachers is a high-performing teacher earning as much as $75,000, $80,000, $90,000, based on all of those factors.
Budget analysts estimate the governor's teacher pay plan will cost more than $300 million next year alone.
Is that responsible in the current economic climate, which you mentioned?
I think it absolutely is responsible. I think there's no greater investment that we can make. I think what the governor has laid out is sustainable. It's fiscally conservative. It's fiscally responsible. But we have to do this over a period of time.
How would you describe the future of education in North Carolina?
I think the future of education is bright. We're going through a real transitional time, but I think if we stay focused on student outcomes and we stay focused on ensuring that our teachers are supported and that they have opportunities to continuously improve through career pathways for teachers, I think we will continue to set the pace not only nationally but internationally.
What grade would you give the administration on education for the time you've been working with it?
I think, I'd give us a C+ right now in terms of where we are. I think we've got a lot of work to do.
All right, C+ with room to grow, obviously.
Right.
Now, the governor's plan is not the only one being discussed. The House and Senate also have their budget proposals, causing heated debate.
All right, let's take a look at those numbers. The Senate just announced a compromise plan that would give teachers an 8% raise instead of an 11% raise. Instead of cutting TA positions for second and third graders, it would keep funding for second graders only. And the House plan funds teacher raises at 6% using revenue from the state lottery. All right, let's bring back our panelists. Dr. Atkinson, you're smiling over there. Let's first talk about teacher assistants. I have young kids. I know that they are vital in the classroom. If you do not have teacher assistants, you have them in the second grade, but not the third grade. How detrimental is that in the classroom? How difficult is that for a teacher?
Well, as class sizes increase, it becomes much more difficult for the teacher. Just today, I was in Winston-Salem Forsyth at a summer reading program, and in the classrooms, it was very difficult to determine which were the teachers and which were the teacher assistants. The teacher had provided the leadership for the teacher assistant, and they were working in small groups, which is one of the best ways to improve reading. So we do need those teacher assistants to help the teacher do a better job in the classroom, but ultimately we need them to improve our reading achievement in our state.
I want to point out that the teaching assistants for second grade would be one-time funded, and then after this, the years following, it would have to be voted on again in order to release funds for those teaching assistant positions. Also a sticking point in one of the versions of the budgets with the Senate, teacher tenure. I'm going to turn it now to you, Mr. Jewell. Teacher tenure, how important is that?
Right. Always want to clarify, teachers in North Carolina do not have tenure. We have what's called due process rights. It simply means they have the right to request a hearing should they ever feel like they're being capriciously or arbitrarily dismissed. That is all it is. We have a very highly effective evaluation system, and always have since I've worked in North Carolina, that monitors teacher performance. You can ask any teacher here, and someone is in your classroom every day. We have open doors, as they should be, very transparent. And I don't care if you have 5 months or 15 years, if teachers are given support and they still don't improve, they don't last in the system. To say that there's a tenure out there that is a job for life couldn't be further from the case. But should they have the right to due process? Yes. Due process was actually started in the 20s by school ed reformers. They looked at college professors. They said, we're not going to be able to pay teachers well here in America, but what can we do to keep them in the classroom? They looked to Germany, and Germany offered due process rights, some protections there, because teachers are uniquely vulnerable to the political environments in their communities. So this gives them some way to say, listen, let me at least have my day in front of a board to plead my case. And you cannot even question evaluations. So that's not even part of the process. This is anything beyond teacher evaluations, because teacher evaluations are not grievable in the state of North Carolina.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Of course, we want audience reaction on this. Let's go back over to Eileen Park.
The Cumberland County School System, and also Ellen Manning with the Chapel Hill Carborough School District. Both of them are teachers. And we touched on teacher pay. The House, the Senate, and Governor Corey all had different plans in their budget in terms of how much money they want to spend on education. One of the plans called for teacher assistants to be put out of the equation. You personally had an experience with this. What is it like not to have teachers assistants?
Well, the teacher assistant that I've always had very good ones, so I've been very lucky, and my teacher assistant has been my intervention specialist, because whenever I get a special needs child in my classroom or a child that needs a lot more care or help, my teaching assistant is right there for me. And there have been times when without her I would not have been able to do a very good job. She's there to help with reading groups, she helps with math groups, she does a lot of the paperwork, she grades papers. And I know that for a fact we're always fighting for our teacher assistants and always seem to be doing everything we can to keep them, because they help us on so many levels. They're there when we are sick. They hold the hands of the substitute teachers. When I first started teaching, I substituted, and it was the teaching assistant that helped me the most, and she held my hand and showed me what to do. And without her, I don't think I would have made it through that year. So teaching assistants, I think, are absolutely critical, and we really need to keep them. And I don't think it's right to make us choose between teaching assistants and more pay. I don't think that's right at all. We should have both, you know, a raise and the teacher assistants.
Then where do you propose? Where do you propose we do make some cuts, though? Because obviously our budgets are limited.
That's a good question, but I don't think it should be. I don't think the cut should be with teacher assistants and teacher pay. They need to figure that one out.
All right, Ellen, thank you. Wanda, what about you? Where do you think we can make some cuts? Because obviously, if we had all the money in the world, we would have quite a different educational system, but we don't. So where do you think we can make some cuts?
I don't know. That's a very tough question. I agree that our teacher assistants are priceless. Teachers definitely deserve a pay raise, but you know, to make us choose, we pit one against the other. So the legislators need to figure that out. It takes all of us working together to make it all work, and I just think they go hand in hand. So our teachers assistants, everyone, and that is an educator, is priceless.
All right, thank you both for your thoughts. We are actually joined by a few of our lawmakers right behind me, not to put you on the spot or anything. So what do you make of these comments about not cutting teachers' assistants, raising teacher pay? What's your name again?
I'm Representative Tricia Cotham from Mecklenburg County. I'm the Vice Chair of Education. You know, just to go back to some of the comments, education should be a priority. It's the biggest part of our budget. However, the Republican leadership has decided that they would rather give tax breaks to corporations and to millionaires rather than fully fund our schools. So when we say we do have tough choices, we do, but we were put into that situation. So it does boil back to choices and priorities and what are our values as North Carolinians. And I believe, and I know most of us in this room, that we should support public education and our teachers, and we have to get all of the legislators on board, and I'm saddened that none of our Republican colleagues are here tonight for this discussion.
All right, what about you, sir? Who do you represent and what is your name?
My name's Mike Woodard. I serve in the State Senate representing Durham, Person, and Caswell counties. I would just echo Representative Cotham's comments. In the biennial budget that we adopted last year, we made some, I think, upside down, backwards kind of priorities. Education is what built North Carolina throughout the 20th century. It's what made us stand out among southeastern states and made us a national leader even through the early part of this 21st century. But we've made some very bad mistakes in the budget, and now what we're trying to ask our teachers to do is to build and rebuild our education system, and we've taken away the tools that they need.
How did we do that?
We made some serious budget bad decisions in our budgeting. We've taken away resources for them. Look at the books. I recently toured our textbook warehouse here in Raleigh. It's almost empty. You know, we spend less than $15 a year for students' textbooks. How can these teachers continue to provide essential information, particularly in the STEM area, to our students if they don't have the resources to give those students? taking away, or the proposal to take away career status for our teachers means that we're losing our teachers. You've heard some of the numbers. I represent a county that has 400 teachers. Over the last 3 years, they've averaged losing 100 teachers out of their pool each year. If you had a business where you lost a quarter of your employees every year, you'd say something was broken and you'd get busy fixing it. We haven't done that with the budget priorities that we've adopted in the General Assembly.
All right, thank you so much for your thoughts. Mel and Sean, I'll send it back to you.
All right, thanks, Eileen. We want to turn it over now to the open mic portion of the town hall. During this time, members of our audience will have 2 minutes to either share their concerns about education in North Carolina or ask a question.
Again, we just want to remind you, we've extended an invitation to members of the Senate and House Education Committee who represent North Carolina and who are here, as you've heard from several of them. And tonight, they'll be answering more questions, but for right now, we want to send it to the first member of our audience who has a question for us.
Hi, my name is Leah Abrams, and I'm a junior at Carborough High School. I have a quick question. A lot of people have been asking tonight if students are going to be ready for the real world when they graduate, and I think it's a good question, but I guess I'm wondering, if we're not in the real world right now, then where are we? I think that our education should be applicable to the real world. I think that we should be solving problems at school, learning by experience. And I think that especially as technology grows, we know it better than many adults do, I think. I think that you can't measure a teacher by their student scores on a standardized test. You can't measure through a standardized test how much a teacher has changed your life or changed the course of your life. So. Do I have more time? Also, I think that if most of the Republican lawmakers knew anything about Keynesian economic theory, they would consider that we're recovering from a low point, from a recession, and that it's time to increase corporate taxes. Thank you.
Representatives, okay, you just heard it, corporate tax increases instead of cutting teacher pay. Your thoughts?
Well, I just want to give a great big shout out to the Chapel Hill Carborough City Schools who have prepared a high school student who can come and lecture legislators on Keynesian economics. So there are some things going well with education. But the point is well taken in that we're being forced to make false choices in the legislature, and we really need to look at the bigger picture. If we're asked to vote on a budget that says, do you want to raise teacher pay 8%, we would all say yes. If we say, do you want to do that and lay off 3,700 state employees, teachers' assistants, send them home with no job, we say no. And being forced to make that choice is a false choice, because if we look at what's possible in this state and all of the revenue that could be generated if we invested in education and didn't say, oh, the money's not there, the investment needs to be made. And so we have to go back to the drawing board.
All right, thank you. What is your name and who do you represent?
I'm Representative Rosa Gill, and I'm from Wake County.
All right, Rosa, there seems to be a lot of division in the House and the Senate politically, more than ever, it seems like. Do you think lawmakers can come together with a compromise that satisfies both parties and teachers and educators all over the state?
If the lawmakers really want to invest in education, and they say it is their top priority, then I think we can come together. I just think we have to make sure that we are true to our belief that our kids are our resource and our best investment that we can make.
But Rosie, you're in the thick of it. Describe what the culture is like. Is it hostile? Is it cooperative? Is there bipartisanship?
Well, I can't even describe the atmosphere down there, because it's, I'm of the minority party, so I never know what's going on. And when we hear things, we're not sure that the majority party is together on what's going on. So we have to wait until they make decisions, because they can vote up or down. They have the majority. They can vote any way they want to. They can give teachers whatever they think is necessary in order for our kids to be successful. But I don't know, and I guess as soon as they figure out that they are not doing what is needed for our children, that maybe they'll come together and they'll present a budget to us that we can all accept.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, let's hear more from our audience members.
My name is Tejal Pat Warden, and I'm a rising junior. We've all had a teacher that we really loved, the kind of person that inspires us and makes us excited about a subject, and the kind of person we work hard for just because we know that we're doing the right thing and we really support this person. And we all in this room really do agree that education is important and having good teachers is really important. So it seems like a silly question to ask why education isn't prioritized higher in the budget, and a lot of times people are just shuffling money around from one type of education to another type of education. But it doesn't make sense to take money out of teacher assistants or UNC system schools and just shuffle it around to somewhere else. That's not changing our education system. It's time to prioritize education above everything else in the budget, because literally it determines our career paths, what we love, what we do in life, and pretty much our entire futures. So a lot of students would like to know what they can do to support education being higher up in the budget. So I would just like to present that as a question.
All right, well, let's hear more from our lawmakers. Joined by Angela. Angela, what's your full name and who do you represent?
I'm Angela Bryan, and I represent Senate District 4, Nash, Halifax, Vance, Warren, and Wilson counties.
All right, Angela, you just heard from one of our audience members. Let's not put teachers in the middle of this political game. Your thoughts?
Well, there is this worldview difference that is important for us to keep in mind. There are those who believe in, our majority believes in a smaller government, so we are in this position because of a reduction in resources through the tax handouts. And therefore, it's in their mind, it is okay to pit teachers against the age blind and disabled, and against teachers' assistants, and against school nurses, and against student scholarships. We're pitting these groups against each other, and that is what we have to speak out against. So I think that even saying is education a priority, that's being misused as an excuse to then cut Medicaid and put the age blind and disabled on the street, and we're refusing to expand Medicaid, which could bring billions of dollars into North Carolina for the budget because of philosophical reasons, again, about small government and not wanting additional federal government monies that would help our healthcare system. So those are complicated, competing interests, and I think in general we have to stand up and say education is a priority, and yet we do not want education and children pitted against the age blind and disabled in our state.
All right, thank you for your thoughts. All right, our last lawmaker, also part of an education committee. Your name and who you represent.
I am Erica Smith Ingram. I'm currently a board member in Northampton County Public Schools, and I'm also senator-elect for Senate District 3, Senate District 3, which includes 8 counties in northeastern North Carolina.
All right,
When I share about Northampton County, one of the challenges we face is that we lead the state in teacher turnover. Last year, we had a turnover of 35%. Now, how does that affect students in the classroom? The challenge is we have to take a tripartite approach to addressing the concerns of educators. I am a classroom teacher, and when I went from engineering to becoming a classroom teacher, I took a $50,000 cut in pay. And now with the challenges that educators are facing, we don't want to leave the profession. However, with the continuous attacks and seeing no salary growth, with the cost of living ever rising, you're putting us in a predicament where we have to, face that flight. As well, we need to retain teachers. How do we build the capacity? In Edgecombe County, they had a high teacher turnover rate, 49% of which were tenured teachers or teachers who have due process. So you're no longer building your capacity and building, investing in your human capital. And so with this high teacher turnover rate, the students don't have the consistency that they need in the classroom.
So what's the solution to keeping our teachers in this state? Not just with terms of pay, not just in terms of resources. What is the solution?
We are going to have to modify our salary schedule. We need to have something that is more contemporary. Perhaps let's have some step increases that will allow for salary growth based on, I'm even supportive of pay for performance. There should be some incentives put in place that will increase teacher salaries. The second thing that we need to look at is having a retention bonus. The retention bonus will help keep teachers in the classroom, and we don't have to face that flight of teachers exiting the profession. And then as well, if we could look at some payment or incentive for high-performing educators. I think that that would be a plus. It would certainly improve morale, and it will increase productivity. I truly believe that.
All right, thank you for your thoughts. All roads lead back to money, though. Mel and Sean, I'll send it back to you.
All right, you hear pay for performance. When I sat down with the governor's senior education advisor, he told me more about the governor's plan to streamline, to actually do that in career pathways, as well as increasing funding for textbooks. Now, I want to turn back to our panel. We've got Mr. Jewell with the NCAE. We also have Dr. June Atkinson, the state superintendent. And the question that I propose to you is that on the flip side, with the majority party, when they made these decisions on how to fund raises for teachers, at least the senators looked at statistics with TAs in the classroom, and they found that TAs don't really matter much for reading levels in elementary schools. So they tried to tie it to some sort of statistics. What's your response to that? That's their side.
I want to respond to that statistic that they're giving out that TAs don't matter. The research they're saying they're giving out is incorrect. In order to have, if you have a 1 to 15 class size, you see a lot of growth there with one teacher. Anything above that, you've got to have a second highly qualified adult in order to help meet the needs of the child. You see our classrooms right now, and you go into an elementary classroom, when there are 25 students there, you can't possibly differentiate instruction there. And now with Read to Achieve and making sure every child is on grade level at 3rd grade, while you're slashing programs in pre-K and early childhood, this is a Hunger Games that we're playing right now in North Carolina. So we know that in order to have a strong school system, you're going to have to increase taxes on the billionaires and the corporations out there. We had a $500 million hole this year. Some are predicting maybe even $1 billion over the next 2 years, less for public schools. So the shell game that we're playing right now, we're going to have an even bigger crisis next year. So we've got to have long-term strategic planning. And as far as pay for performance, we had that. We had that in the early 90s. And we did so well, they ran out of money, and they quit paying us for it. So, and when we talk about career pathways, we've always supported that. We've got to collapse the salary schedule, let teachers get to their pay sooner. But in order for career pathways, you can't limit the number of teachers who have access to these career pathways. Leave it open, let every teacher have an opportunity and not just target a few counties there. You've got to have access for everybody. But capping teachers at $52,000 a year, that's not going to keep anybody in North Carolina for very long.
All right. Dr. Atkinson, yeah, if you guys can give him an applause. This teacher pay issue didn't happen overnight. Teachers haven't had a significant raise in 5 years. Do you think that lawmakers have sort of ignored this problem year after year, and now it's just sort of coming to a head?
Well, first of all, we know that we have had a very difficult economic time, and it is a situation where it's built year after year. And that's why I think it is time that we address the issue by raising beginning teacher salaries, by giving across-the-board increases, by developing a better salary scale with collapsed pay grades, and by having the pay for performance. As Mark mentioned, North Carolina had the longest sustainable pay for performance of any state in the United States. And that was a way of rewarding teachers and having pay for performance.
All right, thank you for that answer. That's obviously the teachers want more support. They also want to be acknowledged when they do well in the classroom, and obviously pay certainly does that.
Yeah, in that back and forth, we heard a lot of twittering in the audience here, and so we want to send it to the audience with their comments.
Hi, I'm Marcia Timmel. I teach 7th grade at North Garner Middle School, and I was this year's North Garner Middle School Teacher of the Year and a semifinalist for Wake County's Teacher of the Year. I'd like to address a question to the legislators, though I have to admit I'm very disappointed that none of the Republican legislators are here because it's really their priorities that I'm not understanding. We've talked a lot about how teacher pay is currently 46th in the nation, and that's why we are having an incredible flight of teachers out of North Carolina. What we haven't mentioned yet is that overall funding for education, expenditures per pupil, is 48th in the nation. We pay less than almost any other state in the country. Are we saying that our children are worth less than children in any other state in the country? Because that's the message they're sending. When they talk about, well, if we're going to give teachers a raise, then we're going to have to get rid of teachers' assistants, or we're not going to have money for books, or we're going to take money out of the colleges. That's saying that they are unwilling to increase the overall amount that they commit to education as a priority. We're still going to be at the very bottom of the heap, and we're just going to let the dogs scrabble around under the table for the bones. Well, I'm not a dog, and neither are our children. I think getting rid of the Common Core standards may be a direct result of the fact that we haven't had any books purchased in the last 7 years. So when parents say, oh, this is too hard for our kids, it's not because our kids aren't capable of meeting high, rigorous standards. It's because we're not providing them the classroom resources that are essential to do that. How would you respond to that as legislators?
Just want to make a quick note here. We did send an invitation out to our Republican lawmakers. However, clearly, our Democratic lawmakers are the ones that showed up. Greg, I'll ask you that question. You just heard from Tricia, was it? Marsha, your reaction.
Well, Marsha, thanks for what you do as a teacher. I worked for the public schools for 16 years before I became a legislator. I know how hard it is every day. My wife is still a teacher. And, you know, I can't defend the priorities that have been set out by the current legislative leadership because I'm not a member of the leadership. You've got 6 Democrats who came here tonight to take the time to listen and talk with you and the rest of the people in the audience. We can't represent their views. But here's what I can say. When I was a kid, I got taught that you get what you pay for. And if what you pay for is 48th in the nation, then we're going to end up with the 48th best educated kids, and we're going to end up with the 48th best economy. And if that's what the current administration wants, then they're going to get it. But that's not what we want, and that's not what the state of North Carolina wants. It's not what the people of North Carolina want. And so people in North Carolina need to recognize that these things matter when it comes down to election time in November.
All right, November coming up. Let's hear for one more lawmaker. You're hearing a lot of frustration from the country, from the state rather, from teachers, from regular citizens who are frustrated with our educational system. Let's talk about solutions. What do you think is the solution to this?
I think we need to look at our budget, and when we come back in January 15, hopefully, as Representative Meyer suggested, we made some changes in the makeup of the General Assembly. We're bringing more progressive leadership in that values education and values our students and teachers more than what we're seeing now. And we prepare the next biennial budget that we make education more of a priority, and we start taking away some of the tax giveaways that favor the 1% of the out-of-state corporations, and we devote those monies. We lost almost $500 million came out of this biennial budget because of those. So we refocus our priorities and we get back to doing what North Carolina has a century-long tradition of doing, which is building one of the best education systems in the Southeast and the country.
All right, thank you for your thoughts. Let's hear more from our audience.
Yes, my name is Dylan Blackburn. I'm Central Region Vice President for North Carolina Future Business Leaders of America. I represent over 6,000 business students in the state. And I just wanted to say that North Carolina is a great place to be for business students. We have a great business education program. We're pioneers in it. We actually were one of the first states to start offering Microsoft classes in our state. But I do have one question. Being in North Carolina means that there's also a lot of businesses here and a lot of businesses to take us and take graduates after they get out of college and high school. How can, I mean, you seemed pretty open a while ago to raising corporate taxes in the state. How can we responsibly balance keeping business in the state and making responsible improvements to education in the state together? How can we balance that?
All right, Tricia, I'll let you answer that question.
So you were talking to me at the same time, but your question was about balancing business and education priorities.
We as graduates have a place to go.
Well, I think they go hand in hand. I'm an educator and I'm a small business owner, so I understand what it means to make payroll, and I also understand what it means to hire someone like you to come and work for me. Education has to be a dialogue, and it really has to work with our business stakeholders, small and big corporations, of what are your needs right now? What are your needs going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? It's also looking at education as a system from birth all the way past secondary education. We're not doing that well right now. We need to value our youngest learners, and we need to value our students after they complete high school and what pathways are they going on. Not everyone is going to go to college, and that's okay. We need to make sure as North Carolina, and for our economic stability, that we have workers who are ready for jobs, that we're bringing in jobs of the 21st century, and that's kind of an old term now, it seems, but that we're really ready for where North Carolina is going, because as a state, we have always been a national leader. Right now, it seems that we're a laughingstock in some circles, and that's very disheartening, and that's sad for my colleagues, and we don't want that for you. As a high school student, I want you to stay in North Carolina. I want you to start a business here in North Carolina, and I want you to then hire my children to work for you. Watch out for my 3-year-old. He's pretty tough, though. But that's what North Carolina is about, and we need to make sure that our priorities are on the right page and that we're all working together. And we can say that, blame the Republicans, blame the Democrats, but education really has to be a bipartisan issue. We're all a part of it. And it really has to be, and we talk about teachers. 1 in 4 North Carolina families has a teacher in their family. This is personal. This is real North Carolina, and we need to all be a part of that dialogue. And that also means you need to participate in democracy every election, and you must vote. And I hope you'll register. They took away pre-registration. That was my bill. But I hope that you will register to vote and always be a part of this government.
So let's hear from one more lawmaker. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that the strong voices here can also be heard right now in the budget impasse that we have by making your voices heard to every one of those conference members who are now on the conference committee making this decision. And I think there are business leaders in our state who support both a reasonable raise for teachers, which is on the table, and not making draconian cuts in health care and in other areas of the budget in order to fund them, not using teachers and education as a pretext for making other kind of draconian cuts. And I think we stand up for that right now. Begin when you go home tonight, get on the computer tomorrow, come to the legislature, we're still there, and make your voices heard and make a difference right now. That's my suggestion.
All right, thank you. Audience, your reaction.
Hi, my name is Tim Barnesback. I am a middle school teacher in Burke County. Representative Cotham said that 25% of teachers are, 25% of residents are teachers. My family ups the average. We have 2. My wife's also a teacher. I'm also the president of the Professional Educators of North Carolina. And one thing I can say about teachers, especially in my family, is we're dedicated and we fulfill promises, and we fulfill our promises to our students. It's difficult to sit sometimes and listen to teachers who, when we talk about compensation, often ask for a raise. In my home and the teachers that I know, we don't ask for a raise. What we've asked for is a commitment, is for you to commit and fulfill the commitment that you made to us when we were recruited to come to North Carolina as outstanding teachers. We're not asking for a raise. We're asking to be made whole under the salary schedule that was promised to us, and then move forward to change the things that need to be changed. I think there's a greater picture when we talk about not just compensation and Common Core and the defunding of public education. I think it's about values. It's not about being 46th in teacher pay and 48th in per pupil spending. It's about where do we value education? How do we value our children? And how do we value our commitment? I don't care about being 25th or 48th or 46th. I want to see a commitment to students in North Carolina and to my family, and promises fulfilled that were made. And how do we push any further? How do we show any more commitment to the legislature and to the people of North Carolina and to our students and their families without a return of that same commitment.
All right. Well, let's ask one of our lawmakers. Rosa, what do you think?
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for what you do as a teacher. I agree that this is not about teacher salary, and I agree that we have to keep our promise to teachers, because I was a teacher for 23 years. I was well aware of the fact that when I started teaching that I had a step arrangement for pay, and I looked forward to it. So I knew that I had to go to work every day, do the best that I could to make sure that my students were well educated, because I knew I was going to get rewarded at the end of the year by moving to the next step. I agree that we ought to be thinking about our students, and I think most of our teachers are. You know, they're concerned about their salary, but if you take them back to the classroom, every teacher is concerned about how well their children are doing, nationally and educationally, how much advancement each child will make in their classroom. So we have dedicated teachers who need the raise, but they are really committed to making sure that our kids are successful. So I thank all teachers who are committed to helping our kids be successful.
All right, thank you. As you heard from our audience, it sounds like there's a sense of betrayal in the sense of commitment, that there isn't some consistency or delivering on the promises that were made years ago and suddenly stopping and halting the budgets, et cetera. What do you think about this?
Well, when the lottery was first introduced, it was introduced as the education lottery. And now as the years have gone by, more of those funds are being diverted away from education. And so I agree with the teacher who said that we need to first keep our word. We are demonstrating, we are modeling, but what about the commitment that we made to the professionals? The teaching profession, is it respected? I always say now, teaching is a hard job. When I first went into it, I said, man, how hard can this be? I get my summers off and I get most holidays, but being a senior material specialist engineer, I have not worked a job harder than being a classroom teacher. It is the most difficult job on the planet, and it deserves more respect. It deserves more pay. We need to be equipped with the resources that we need so that we can empower our students. According to the Department of Labor Statistics, in 2007, they predicted by the year 2020, we're going to have 2,100 technical jobs that we don't even have the college majors for. So what we need to do is let's look at investing in those STEM fields. Let's look at producing the type of salaries that we need to be able to retain teachers. And then let's have this seamless transition from K through 12 education as well as through postgraduate education so that we can equip our future leaders, our technicians, so that the United States as a whole can take their place now and start performing and competing globally like we once did. And that is not going to happen until the legislators come together, bipartisan effort, and put into teaching the value that those teachers are putting into the classroom every day.
All right. Thank you for your thoughts. Mel and Sean?
All right, thanks, Eileen. Teachers, obviously, we expected to come here and ask, and I love the way the teacher said, not for a pay raise, but essentially to be made whole. But Dr. Atkinson, are you surprised of the reaction from students here tonight, that they are just as passionate as the teachers, talking about everyone knows of a teacher who they've loved, somebody who's inspired them, and they've asked for a request of what can students do to get their voices out there, to say, hey, teachers should be compensated well, and that they should be acknowledged.
I'm not surprised at all. I have the opportunity to travel to schools all over North Carolina, and I talk to teachers, I talk to students, and I hear students saying over and over, I love my teacher. My teacher does this for me. My teacher does that for me. And yesterday I was in Greensboro with over 3,000 teachers in our state. They were there. because they wanted to learn how to do a better job in the classroom. And as a part of that conference, there were students representing our career technical student organizations. And those students recognize how valuable their teachers are to them in their learning. And I saw many of those students hugging their teachers, thanking them. And so I believe that our teachers feel that their students appreciate what they're doing, and so often our students do tell their teachers how much they appreciate what they're doing for them.
All right, Dr. June Atkinson, thank you for that. Now we want to turn it over to the audience for their reaction and their questions.
My name is John Burns. I'm a resident of Raleigh. I'm a candidate for Wake County Commission. I have I have one question for the legislators, and I do wish the Republican legislators were here, but I'll direct it to you. But first, I'd like to say that both of my parents were public school teachers in the High Point City Schools and the Guilford County Schools. And you know, they never made a lot of money, and they never expected to. They knew they weren't going to be paid like rock stars, but they wanted to be treated like professionals. And I'm concerned when I hear that the governor's education assistant says that teacher's assistants don't matter because reading scores aren't measurable and an increase when the teacher's assistant is there. My mother was a kindergarten teacher. She couldn't go to the bathroom during the day if she didn't have a teacher's assistant. And that is the type of, these folks want to be treated like professionals. And what I'm concerned about from the legislators is that our current General Assembly is defunding at the state level, pushing responsibilities down to the county commission and the school board level, and at the same time handcuffing county commission's ability to raise the funds necessary to meet those responsibilities. There is a bill currently pending in the state Senate that I think comes up for a vote tomorrow, which would tell county people that counties could have referenda to raise sales taxes, but would force us to choose between education or transit. That seems to me to be not only a false choice, but economically stupid. And I would ask the legislators here today whether you would commit to oppose that bill, which I believe is House Bill 1224, and whether you believe that we are currently setting up false choices in our legislature. Thank you.
All right, Greg, I'll let you answer that question.
Well, I'm opposed to that bill, and I do believe there are a lot of false choices. I already talked about some of them, but I want to go back to an earlier point that John made, which is when are we going to stop testing everything and making every value decision about education based on achievement tests of math and reading? There are so much more to our children than just math and reading tests. And so if everything we decide, oh, we need teacher's assistants based on whether they impact reading tests, there's more to school than reading tests. And right now, the proposal is to cut third grade teacher's assistants at the same time that we're implementing the Read to Achieve program, which massively increases the number of achievement tests for third graders on reading. You can't expect kids then to all of a sudden be better performers and meet these new standards if you take away the resources that help them meet their basic needs every day.
So what's the solution?
Well, I think in this case, we need to make sure that part of the solution is keeping the teaching assistants in third grade and second grade and keeping that on permanent funding. I also believe that we really need to just reevaluate our entire educational system to think about what do we value. And if we value more than just standardized achievement scores, then how do we start to pay teachers, fund our schools, and take care of students based on valuing things like, are you coming out career ready? Are you someone who loves learning? Do you have critical thinking skills that go beyond being able to bubble in a multiple choice test? Are you someone with good values who will contribute back to the community? That's what public schools are for.
Thank you so much for your thoughts. To wrap this up, we're going to talk to two more students because they provide a unique perspective in this discussion. What do you think? Do you think you're a critical thinker?
I am a critical thinker. You know, being in CT classes, we do have to do critical thinking, and we have in one of them, business law, we actually created kind of a community, and we made a place to where you have to find a job, and then you go and you buy your car and your house, and you have to use critical thinking skills to do these things. And it was very successful. All the kids in my class ended up doing very well.
You know, you heard a lot of complaints from teachers, from lawmakers about the state of education in North Carolina. Do you feel like you're getting an adequate education?
I am getting an adequate education. You know, the CT classes, the career and technical classes do offer a different perspective on education. You get to the practical knowledge that you don't always get in core classes.
What about you? Do you think you're getting a solid education?
I think we're getting a solid one, but I think that we need to make sure that the debates here don't end up affecting our education in the classroom. So I think that sometimes our class, being one of the first classes that has been affected by Common Core, has almost been kind of like an experimental class, and I don't think that's as fair to us as other classes, really.
Let me ask you this. Your teachers, do they seem stressed out, overworked, underpaid? I mean, is that something you feel in the classroom, or do you feel like they're able to hide that quite well?
It's absolutely felt in the classroom, really. So, yes, ma'am. That's one reason why I said that. So, yes.
How do you feel it?
That affects my education. Whenever it starts affecting my education, that's really something that needs to be talked about, like here, and needs to be acted on at the Capitol.
Oh, wow. So as a student, you feel that stress. Toss it back to you.
Thanks, Eileen. We had heard so many important questions, heard some heartfelt comments from teachers, from students, from lawmakers answering questions, as well as business leaders. And we know that a lot of you out here still have a lot of questions and comments. So we want to encourage everyone in the audience and the lawmakers to stick around to continue this conversation even after we go off the air. We want to also thank Dr. June Atkinson, State Superintendent. We appreciate your time, as well as Mark Jewell, the Vice President of the North Carolina Association of Educators. And thank you so much for giving your input throughout this last hour.
And we appreciate all of you who are in the audience right now for coming out tonight for this very important discussion on a very important topic for our state education. And we want to say a special thank you for those joining us live on WNCN.com. Thank you for being a part of this and responding to our requests for Twitter and Facebook questions.
Of course, if you missed any part of this town hall, it is all available right now on our website, WNCN.com. We also have our town hall in its entirety on our YouTube channel. Just search WNCN. So from all of us here at WNCN, we really appreciate your time and you joining us, and we really appreciate all of you coming out today, spending this time to give us your comments, to ask your questions. This is a very important topic that affects everyone here in our state. So we really appreciate you coming out here this evening and talking with us. So you can give yourselves a round of applause because you did it.